All right. Parth, the Coherence Coaching Guru, thank you for coming on the Healthy Indian Podcast, episode 71. I really appreciate you coming on, or whatever episode this may be when we upload it. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, and there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of gems you will offer. And I really think that having you on will give people a very artistic and a fun and lighthearted way to use laughter almost to, take over their mind and just know that life is not so complicated. There's always ways to get to the happiness and to kind of conquer whatever's battles or hardships they're dealing with. So thank you for coming on my mental health podcast for fitness. And definitely let's jump into the subconscious mind of Parth, the Coherence Coach. So.
Well, Umang, thank you. I'm so humbled. We are all works in process, and in progress, and just great to be here. Also, just really want to acknowledge you. I actually had the opportunity to check out the last 4 of your episodes, and
Hey.
really, really awesome. Yeah, we gotta I wanted to make it a point last night to geek out on your episodes last night, and I was just to get your vibe, right? So just kudos to you. Keep going. You're doing great.
Thank you, man. It's been a long journey come ahead, and just one of those things where I'm learning as I'm going, and as a creator and as a podcaster, I take it one day at a time, but it means a lot to me. So thank you. And thanks again for coming on the Healthy Indian Podcast. So one of the things I also geeked out over some of your videos too, and they're very cheerful. So, I found that as a thing. So could you tell me a little bit about, I guess, some of your methods towards coherence coaching, such as hypnotherapy? Well, how do you go about that? And I thought that was really cool last time we talked. So maybe you could mention it on this podcast too, because I think that was super sick.
Sure. Awesome. So a lot of my work combines, I would say, the following 3 to 4 principles or aspects. One is neurolinguistic programming. So I can share basically what that is in a very nutshell for everyone. So for those of you who are all engineers, you're familiar with natural language processing, right? So natural language processing is a composite of 3 things. I mean, according to Wikipedia, at least, it's linguistics, computer science, and artificial intelligence. So the linguistics part, consider neurolinguistic programming the NLP behind the NLP. So it looks at how language is utilized, how it impacts us neurologically, physiologically, and then how it also shapes the way that we look at the world, right? So that's NLP, and looks at kind of cool ways to use language to support healing in others, and then also for ourselves on a day-to-day level. And then hypnotherapy is, it's funny because when I was first introduced to hypnotherapy or learning it as a study, I always thought hypnotherapy means like a hypnotist. That means like some person giving away their freedom, sitting, standing on a platform or on a stage clucking like a chicken, and then waking up and going, oh, I don't know what I did, and everyone laughing at them, right? Like that was kind of my view of hypnosis,
Yeah.
and coming from, kind of a desi background, right? Also from Jersey, it's like, oh, you're not going to get in my brain. Like, oh, you want to stay back,
Yep.
So kind of having that sense too. But what it really combines is, so therapy, which is basically different modalities of healing and releasing trauma, and then hypnosis, which is essentially leading someone into deep states of relaxation. So tones are really important, creating safety, allowing someone to kind of go there and get into a certain space. And then they share various things as a product of different cues that we provide them. And it's all recorded. And then the client and I, then we unpack kind of what they shared. And they're like, wow, I didn't know I was showing up that way. I didn't know that came through to me, and then we help integrate and then apply. So it's NLP and hypnotherapy. I also look at I'm in a couple years ago, I got trained in yin yoga. Yin yoga is, it was like maybe 50 to 75 hour kind of certification. And the big thing is with yin yoga is often we're utilizing a lot of our yang energy, like a lot of the cerebral problem solving, results producing energy, which we need. Then, of course, we know yin, right, which is more restorative, more allowing. It drives the yang nuts because you're like, this is a waste of time. Like, I'm going to stare at the wall, daydreaming, that's a waste of time. Show me the money, like Jersey, right? So, you know, but yin yoga is really about like floor poses and opening up a lot of spinal work. So anyway, I always say you got to yin it to win it. These little cheeky
Yin it to win
sayings.
it. That's a good one.
Yang gives you a bang, but you got to yin it to win it. um, and so that opened up, and I mentioned that because of meridian lines. So combining an understanding of how our meridian lines operate, along with how trauma is infused into the body, and without releasing it, it just kind of adds up, and that can add up in forms of weight, in forms of all sorts of different things. But
it comes out some way or another, right? From some realm or another, it'll come out it'll manifest some way, right?
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And I guess like when you do hypnotherapy on people, do they have different emotions on their face? Maybe like anger, crying, sadness. It like varies on the individual, right? I believe. Or
it varies on the individual. And the work that I do right now, so we were trained in a lot of different things, but right now in my current 12-week program, we do what is work around limiting beliefs. So the premise here is, and the other cool thing about how I was trained was the subconscious mind. I'm going to throw in some like concepts here and there, for everyone. Be like, oh, that, and just let the seeds drop, right? Like there's just be like, oh, I remember that now. And you're going to make connections. So the subconscious mind is always operating at the level of an 8-year-old, and I think this is alluding to what we were sharing before about planets and orbits, right? In a way. So yes. As an 8-year-old, the first 8 to 12 years of our formative early development, comprises of the following 2 or 3 major steps. So usually the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the big job for a baby is to not die. The way a baby doesn't die is that we match, mimic, and mirror our caretakers. Right? So we match, mirror, and kind of mirror, match, and mimic.
Look up to the people who raise us or are in our lives, right? So we can either like be like them or not. Yeah. Yeah.
And as a 6-year-old, 5-year-old, we're not processing, I want to be like you. It's more like, oh, do I match? Can I match Umang, who's my dad's facial expressions? And can I mold myself around him so he doesn't leave me and abandon me? And because I got to eat next and I need someone to right? So like as a 4 or 5-year-old, you're kind of processing things this way. Now, every moment or every these imprints have
Parth, continuing this conversation, you were talking about the mind of an 8-year-old and how we try to match the energy of our role models, our parents, etc. So continue with that, the statement you were making.
Exactly. Like the young Umang and the young, like little Umang, little Parth, right? All of the people in the audience, when we were small, kind of the design of a baby is to not die, so survive. And so our survival strategies are 3 things: matching, mirroring, and mimicking. And that's why, so when we extrapolate that out in the trauma world, we call it our inherited woundology, because we adopt and adapt the things that our role models did or didn't do. Right. And so we may find ourselves maybe in relationship playing out passive aggressive patterns from our parents because that's just what we knew. And so in our client journey with clients is we actually using kind of hypnotherapy, which is very light states of relaxation and some cues, is within a 45-minute to like a 1-hour period. What we're able to do is we're able to take the neural mapping. It's going to sound interesting. You may have follow-up questions. I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole, but this is really fascinating. I can share it this way. Is we take the neural mapping.
Go for it.
Cool. Yeah. Is that we take the neural mapping of that belief. So we try to identify it in 8-year-olds. So I was sharing with you earlier that the coaching I do is around performance. So what do people want to perform on? They want to get that job. They want to give that speech. They want to make that presentation. They want to get that raise, whatever that thing is. Now, if they feel comfortable in that arena, great, go for it, right? Like clearly what you've been doing before in the last situation is working, so keep going. But maybe people want to up-level themselves, right? So they're like, hey, I want to strive for something that I've never strived before. in that moment, that limiting belief comes, right? It's like if you're wanting to ask someone out on a date who you think is out of your league, there's that limiting belief that's like, I don't know, and it checks us out. So that has neural patterning. So what we do is we take that patterning and we map it onto a belief. And again, this is through process I'm describing it. We map that onto the neural patterning of something that was once true but no longer true. So you were once 4 feet tall. Well, when you were 4 feet 1 centimeter, guess what? That was never gonna be true ever again. But when you were, that was true. You were in 5th grade. For me, I owned a Honda Civic. When I was a Honda Civic owner and a 2-door and a lowrider, I was like, I'm a Honda Civic owner, Jersey, yeah, Edison, Avenel, But then it broke down and I had to change it. So we map it onto something that was once true, no longer true. Then we create a desired belief that if in that moment, Umang, who was young, like 8 or 9 years old or 7 years old or something, and instead of that, if we could turn that ouchie upside down, right, that 8-year-old ouchie, right, and we could say, hey, what did Umang really want to do? And then we map that onto a neural patterning of something that you know to be true. That will never change. So an example could be, even after, when you're 90 years old, will you stop being a son?
No.
So that itself has a neural patterning. That the confidence in that reality that is so embedded in your identity, that is so part of the foundation of how you operate, has a neural patterning. And so then when we can associate that with something that we now want to create to be true at that level, the grip of that old kind of limiting belief in a way releases. And the way that this kind of plays out is, again, performance. So folks who want to up-level their performance, maybe the adult version of something's wrong with me or I'm not good enough is, if I up my charges I had to deal with this too. If I up my charges as a coach, will people pay me? Who's going to pay me if I'm going to do, if I, increase my charges, or if I ask my boss for a 10% raise, which normal is like 3.5, he's going to say, get out of my office. But I know I put in the work, but you know what? You shoot for the moon, you land on the stars. You ask for 10, maybe you'll get 6, but who asked for 10? So, when you can release that, so the whole imposter syndrome, all of that stuff that is like built from the seeds of this, that starts loosening. So when that's gone.
And for viewers who are new to, I guess, imposter syndrome because they're maybe younger and they don't even know what it is, it's basically the fear of, like, you're not good enough, the fear of you can't attain something because of you don't, like, just for no reason, like you don't feel like you need to do it. Maybe you're not in the right place in life. Like, let's say you graduate college, you have the degree, but you don't feel like you're an engineer, or doctor, a lawyer, or wherever you are, right? Like, it's almost like the fact that you achieve something awesome or great, but you don't feel good enough that you deserve it. Like, it's like an internal thing. It's an internalization. But tell me if I'm wrong, Parth. I think that's what it is, right?
You're absolutely right. And what happens is the imposter syndrome is basically a byproduct of things that we swang. Like, we swang in places in life, right? Maybe we swang in a relationship. Maybe we swang in a job. Maybe we swang in whatever. And it didn't turn out the way we wanted. Right. And then then that creates this, it feeds the fire of something's wrong with me. Feeds the fire of, I don't know if I want to look like a fool the next time I try this, I better I not try it. Or if I try it, then, who am I to try it? Bada log ke che, bada tu kon che baba badu vastu karwama. Like, then we start shrinking. So the minute we feel that shrinking feeling, whatever that is, that's imposter syndrome. But that's a byproduct of that grip. So when we release the grip, then a lot of energy starts coming back to us, and then in a very intentional container that's created by a coach or a therapist or a community even. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The power of a mastermind. We start elevating, and our temperature level in life starts kind of up leveling. So.
No, it's definitely a very interesting, Parth. And I definitely feel like imposter syndrome almost is very draining and almost like lets people like stop them from happiness, right? And everybody wants to attain happiness, but it's almost like when you have imposter syndrome, you're almost self-sabotaging your own progress and your own thoughts, and you have negative thoughts, and from negative thoughts you don't ever come out of it, and it's overthinking and stuff. So definitely like one of those things where like, how do you coach your clients who do have imposter syndrome or a mental health issue? How do you coach them through it? Because everybody's case is different. Everybody has their own traumas, life hardships. How do you I guess tackle a client that's going through those situations?
So one is by the time that so it's a 12-week program. So by the time that we're at week 5, we've gone through that first session. And then what we do is, and I'll share, let me share with you my process, but also think from a place in all of you that you can apply this stuff. Like what I'm about to share with you can actually apply, right? So think about how you can actually adapt this to your own way. So I'm going to give you what I do with clients, and you can break it down, deconstruct it, and create your own version, right? Because I think like this stuff's got to make sense, right? So what I do is I ask them, and here's the subconscious mind is an 8-year-old, right? It doesn't process negative predicates in a sentence. So for instance, if you say you want to be debt free, it doesn't cognize the free part. It's I debt, I debt, I debt, I debt. So what I would do is you consider, and the other piece just to note is we often think the thing that we're running after or the thing that we want to acquire is going to make us feel a certain way. And it has its feeling. I mean, it has its merit. I mean, we want things. There's a value for how we feel when we have that.
Absolutely.
Right? So I don't want to take that away. This is a human, right? We're deserving and worthy of having things. And here's what I would suggest is when you have that thing, ask yourself, how am I going to feel when I have that thing? So it could be a vacation. It could be whatever it is. So you can say, I am at peace, or I'm confident. So we work with the client and say, well, when you have that thing, how are you going to feel? And there's some clients I've worked with, clients who have been in relationships, clients who are single, guys, who wanted to be in a relationship, women who are like, I want to call in the one, right? Like this is we're all dealing with like, this is human. We all want love. We all want everything, right? So ask them, well, how do you want to feel? So 3 things you want to identify is when you have that thing, what's it going to look like? How's it going to feel? Are there any sounds associated with it that you hear when you have that? Are there any smells associated with it when you have that? So I was working with this one really good friend, and looking for a relationship, right? And he's looking for someone. I said, well, when you hold her, like when you hold her in your arms, like can you describe it? Can you paint me a frame? And he was like, I was like, there's something about like women's shampoo, you smell that, sorry for everyone, this is real talk here, you're like, oh, it smells like a girl, right? Like, I mean, she prescribed to the heteronormative, narrative of life. And I was like, well, how is it going to feel? He's like, wow, her hair smells like blossoms. And when I hold her, I feel good helping her feel secure. It's like, great. That's the feeling we want. So then we say, I am feeling proud and secure being with my partner.
Wow. That's powerful, man. It's comforting almost, secure and powerful,
So then what happens is when Umang is being, when Parth is being proud and secure, guess what we're attracting? Someone who is resonant with that frequency.
Yes, absolutely.
So we think often it's do, be, have, or do, have, be. We're going to do things so we can have something, so we're going to be something. But at the physiological level of feeling and energy we're putting out, it's actually be, do, have.
Do you feel like sometimes like, when they say like you can't explain in words like why you like someone, but it's almost like your own energies just match. Like, like you could have every little thing on the paper, right? But when they say like you find the right person, your energy is just like a perfect match with theirs, and it's almost like yin and yang, right? To go back to what you said earlier, like koi fish is just like synchrony all the time, and it's effortless. But there's definitely effort in a relationship, but it's effortless just to, I guess, love them, right? So that's really cool. So also I always want to know this. where do you get your energy from and your drive to become a coherence coach? Because you have a lot of funny puns, you know, like ouchies and different things that you say, and it's really interesting to gauge that. So where does that come from? It's like funny yet charming charisma, right? So where does that come from?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. It comes from.
Like because I saw your reel. Can I share it? I would love to share it,
Go
but
for it. Sure.
it's just like so good. Like this really resonated with me today. It was about 1 second. Let me just pull it up. Where'd it go? But top 10. No. I'm trying to find it. It's somewhere here. Would you brush your teeth with a fork? So I thought this was really funny.
I'm glad you got a kick out of that one.
I thought that was hilarious because sometimes like doing too much or just realigning and stuff. So I was like Parth has a lot of energy. Where does that come from, right? And that was like my thought process when I wrote down that question. I was like, where does he get his energy from, right? Because sometimes, yeah, like you know, not everyone has that drive that's always gonna keep coming back, you know. So, what's the story behind that?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Couple things. I mean, there's some mental ways of kind of approaches of life, so I can start there, and then there's some actual physical practices that really help keep my energy level up throughout the day. Um, Mental processes is, to be honest, like going down the rabbit hole of self-development work, was as challenging as it was. And there, you go through different spaces because you're dealing with yourself, you're dealing with your shadow. And I'm happy to share with you and the audience the different spaces that I invested in, that got me really to see how much of this, the voices in my head are me and how much of them are
Right.
actually me. And how much for these voices that are in my head, are they paying me rent to stay in my head? I'm like, they're not. And I let them hijack, and so I think going down like self-development work was really, really helpful. I also, another mental framework was, I mean, I've definitely made mistakes in life, when I look at it back that way, I've definitely created harm. I've certainly had things that I've done that, has created, and I've lived lots of different interesting lives and, and swang and just didn't hit the ball, but had everything else, along the way. And that's life. And I think that I had to, learn to forgive myself for that. There's one of the questions you asked earlier, which is like, what are those things? And this is actually, I have a number of different tips and things like that too, that in preparation for today's call, for how to start a coherence practice. But the thing that, and I'm giving the bonus up now, right? But, is had to really forgive myself, and, I've hurt. I've certainly, what's the word? Like made a huge difference for different people. I've been a leader in the Jain community for a long time and led numerous workshops and all those things. And, there's those people that we know we've hurt, that, oh man, I wish I could have made that choice better, or, oh man,
Absolutely.
right. And I think the ability to forgive ourselves is huge, and I think the ability to find people who are going to just, I call them like your angels in life, who are like, hey man, like, can you let that go? Like, can you let that go? And can hold you in that. It's been so huge. In the last several years, I really delved into men's work, and I'm an only child, so I kind of didn't have certain emotional, like, I feel like I emotionally grew up later in life than other people, who have siblings, because I didn't know how to, just only child. Everything is, all you have is you. So, these last several years getting into like men's work, which then allowed me to get more in touch with my emotional self, was huge. So I also with clients, I'll say, we have to. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, did you grow up as an emotional child, or were you like not that emotional, and then you found your emotional self? I was just trying to intersect because you said you found your emotional self. So I was wondering, were you not emotional like growing up, or were you?
It's a great question. I think I was always emotionally sensitive, and I was always empathic.
Gotcha.
I would always feel things a lot. And then I would
Gotcha.
wonder, why do I, like, I don't belong from this place? Kind of this feeling of a misfit. I mean, I
Gotcha.
even remember having my first suicidal ideation moment, at 6 years
Oh,
old, like going, I just want to jump in this lake and end it. Like, why am I here? This is too hard. This is like
right.
way too hard. And also, prior to being 6, I came to the US when I was 4 from India, and I had a lisp, I had a stutter, I couldn't speak any English, and in all of these different
You came a
scenarios.
long way, by the way. That's insane. I can't even like think of you at like stuttering and lisp. Like I can't even think of that. And the fact that you're well spoken, it like shows like you definitely did work on it, man. So you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you. And I went to speech pathology classes, for 3 years. I remember Jim Carrey was like a huge comedian, when I was kind of up
Yeah.
like right in the 80s, 90s. And I remember watching a Jim Carrey movie and like looking at myself in the mirror and like smiling and like, what does my smile look like? Like, does my smile match the smile of all the other kids? Because I don't want to look like the idiot, and like, but I remember like these are the things that we do, right? As like young people, our younger selves, to fit in. And so I, I mean, I'll pause in a moment and then we can move on. But finding people with whom you can get real about these things, be like, hey man, tell me about your trauma, man. Tell me about like that struggle. What was it like when you got picked on? What was that, and you can come together and release that. I used to have a crying quota, like literally once every week. I had to cry, like for 15 minutes, and cry meaning like it didn't have to. I mean, it could be jarred or triggered by a rom com. It could be, it could be an emotional trigger, or I'm cutting onions, and I'm just like, I need to cry because the energy that we feel as beings that are having a human experience in the form of emotions that are trapped in our body are stuck there, and so got to get it out. Um,
It's
yeah,
also conditioning. I feel like it's also conditioning too. Like just like that experiment, like little Albert, like he was like a little baby and like they literally took away, he had an association with pets. And then once they like, associated a sound with that pet, it was almost like the baby was scared of like touching pets. So it's almost like our environment and growing up as like, should I be part of this group or just being bullied or in general, just not being, I guess, caught on to like society's norms makes us feel some type of way and therefore our future selves suffer or our developmental selves. But then we find each other when you find like-minded people like you and I, and then you can have like a more respectful and accepted conversation versus somebody that's like, you're not on the same frequency or energy as you would say, right? So no, I appreciate that. But continue what you're saying. If
well, I think the last thing, it's like, I think with this journey of, I mean, my own journey of coaching, working with people, I also provide like free financial education and literacy workshops every Tuesday for our community, and working with people around their energy, around this very sensitive topic around money, right? It's funny. I feel like the older I'm becoming in a way, like the more basic I'm becoming. Like, man, you look like you had a hard day. What was your day like? Like, all of us have a hard day. I mean, just to be asking someone that question, just to be asked that question, like these are little things that mean so much, and I think it's important also, last thing I'll say is to really honor my needs. Like there are times where I'm feeling alone, or I'm feeling isolated, or I'm feeling like whatever it is that I'm doing is not working, and I know there's a part of me that's like, you just got to keep going, bro. You got to keep going. You don't know
absolutely.
when the exit is off the highway. We got to keep going. Even that takes something. Maybe I need to call a friend and be like, yo, man, I'm having a bad day today. Like I need to pick me up. Tell me something that you're inspired about me. Now that takes something to ask for.
I was just about to say that as guys, and I'm not trying to put down women, but as guys, we always go off the route of making fun of each other or making fun of just a situation or updating each other on like some type of thing, but we never ask each other how we're feeling at the end of the day. And even like I have friends and relatives that like I used to ask those questions to, but like it's harder and harder. And it might just be age and just kind of time, but it's one of those things I feel like that needs to be talked about, right? And it's okay to just, just ask for like a emotional eval, right? Like just like, hey, like I'm having a shitty day, bro. Why am I feeling like this? It's been fucking hell, you know? So
Yeah, and sometimes like I think we're so in the thick of the feeling, it's hard to name it, right? When you're in the thick of like it's just the day's been heavy on you, and someone's like, "Hey, Umang, how you feeling about today?" You're like, "I just want to crash in my bed, man. Like, can't you feel? I look down, I'm exhausted, But then if we can ask, like, your day it seems like your day was hard, huh? Or what was really hard about your day today?
yeah,
Because
that's the way you ask, right? This is what you're saying.
yeah, and then we often sometimes I think, and I do this too, right? Is like to ask so like I feel better about someone else's pain because I don't want to feel their discomfort. So then I'm like, "How's your day?" Well, it was well. Here's what I would do if I were you, because I don't want to feel the discomfort. Versus, how's your day? Like, it must have been hard, huh? And then usually, what's wild is the person will switch the topic. They'll go, "Ah, no, no, no." I'll be like, "No, no. I actually asked you how it was, and I really wanted to wait until to really hear your answer." Blows people's minds away.
Yeah, right. It's like, damn, who is this guy? Why is he asking me this? But it's more so you're coming from a place of caring, but it's like it's almost like they're just not used to that kind of like care of an answer, so they just don't want to. It's like backwards. It's like I said, it goes back to conditioning. I feel like people have been taught in society to like put away negative thoughts, and then just like when they're confronted about those negative thoughts, even from a place of care, they handle it so negatively. Like for example, like what you went through, like you just avoided it. But a normal person that has not even normal, I'll take that back. Someone that can just be like, oh, that's such a good thing that you asked. Like I've been having a crappy day, and sometimes it's so easy to open up to a stranger. Like I've had conversations with homeless people in New York when I was in college. I've had like conversations with the most random people when I was traveling Europe. Like, just things. Sorry, not Europe. I like brain farted right now. Costa Rica, and it was like interesting to just like just let your heart out, because it's just like there's no like he'll never like tell anyone my secrets, vice versa. Um, but what I guess when it comes to mental advice, do you have for people looking to start their own coherence coaching practice? Because it seems like it's a road where if you don't have the drive, the energy, and the mindset for it, it can be a really tough road to give other people advice. Because I feel like you need to have a certain level of experiences and hardships and overcome successes to really help someone else out, right? As a coherence coach, and I'm sure the mental health part of it and the mental battle is definitely a challenging one, right, to face. So
Great. I will answer. I would like to respond maybe in 5 ways. Because I really thought about like how to break this up, and we love bullet points. Right. And so one is I would say invest in yourself and in learning environments. So what advice is you've got in order to whenever someone is choosing to go down any kind of path of like I want to be a therapist or I want to be a coach or you're working with people at that deep level, you have to do that on your own first. Right. So it's really important to invest in yourself, and invest in different learning environments. Like I myself, I've probably been in the self-development space probably for 14 years. And
whoa,
I've probably spent over $15,000 in my own personal training and development.
wait, that's awesome, man! Congrats to you. Not everyone. Most people would not do that because they're just scared to, you know. I feel like we would spend more money on smoking vapes or cigarettes than doing that, right? Like to be honest with you.
I mean, each vape's, each vape's $20, and that's going to last what, 2.5 weeks, it's real. I mean, I get it. Right. But the thing is, I think was when don't worry about, oh, I have to spend this much or that much.
Exactly.
If you do what everyone else does, you're going to have what everyone else has. And if that's what we want, I don't think it's like a this or that. It's I want that. And I also want this. So life is kind of a both end situation, and you have to invest in yourself. like I was part of an organization, and I can even share three at least modalities or toolboxes that worked for me. One organization that I have been part of, not as active recently, but it's called Landmark Education. They have centers all around the country. There's a center in South Plainfield, in fact, in New Jersey, centers in New York, centers in like 30 different states, even in India. And once you go through their foundational programs, and I don't know if it's the same now, but I used to be a volunteer coach where we would travel to different cities on our own dime and go through training on weekends with like 3, 4, 5,000 other coaches that are someone who, and you don't know who these individuals are. They're not, maybe it's someone who is an executive at PepsiCo who's like, hey, I have time on my hands and I want to do this on the side, and I just do that for money. The kinds of people you'll meet is incredible. I've done Tony Robbins, even my certification for neurolinguistic programming, hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, which takes you back to this actually lifetime and could even take you back past. Another conversation, but clients will go back there. That training was about $5,000, or actually $3,500, because three of us took it together. So you
Wow.
invest in your training and learning environments. So that's one. Two is, I would say, align yourself with others who have a higher temperature level than you. So we all, there's a quote, I forget what's it, but there's a theory that whenever you're part of a certain community, everybody will relegate down to the medium, like in terms of what our capacity is, and what kinds of conversations we entertain and what we're about, and what we prioritize and value. And so when you're in environments with people who are operating at a higher frequency or a different frequency, not that they're perfect, but you're just like, hey, I really like that and I don't like that. I really want to learn that and I don't want to learn that. Like, you get to say, right? Like, every student gets to say. So that's another, is like hanging out with people who are in those higher temperature environments. I also learned this is that we're not entitled to another person's expertise. You have to earn it.
Yep.
You have to really earn it. And even the people who are giving things away for free, they had to develop themselves to a level of expertise and invested in their learning so they can provide this for free for someone for whom this is a foreign conversation. It's like the first day of school, you could hate your teacher. Your teacher's still paying off debt. Teacher ass and everybody else's ass in that classroom, right? Like, you have a right to hate your teacher, and you can grumble, but like, they're doing this for you. And so I think that's another like piece of it is like find those people who are operating at that temperature level, and then you might find a few who are willing to open up their kimono as you earn it, and say, hey, let me introduce you to these three other people. Let me introduce you to this one other person.
Bring unity almost, right?
Yeah, and you never know like what you have to earn, because I'll share with you at least a few examples where maybe an older mentor test me, do this, Parth, do this for a certain period of time. It wasn't about the thing me doing it. It was about, can I not surrender, like as in relinquish my sovereign choice, but can I just do what this coach is telling me to do? Like, just like, do I have enough? So he's testing, older people will test your humility. I say, hey, wax on, do this. You might think it's boring, but they're saying, can you last? What are you getting out of this? And then they're going to help you process. And when you process and integrate, you will lift off, because you earn their trust. Does that make sense?
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. I really appreciate that. I know you have a lot to say, so I just wanted to make sure that I gave you enough time. No, thank you, Parth. I really appreciate that. And no, I definitely think like, you finding the right knowledge and in things that make you a better person at what you do is very important. I feel like, money is just a thing. It's just monetary. It has no real value besides giving you the tools you need. And I guess you using it for your coherence coaching and self-development is the right move. Because you used it for the tools you needed to be a coherence coach. So, I think that was the right move. And, I saw a reel that you posted, but I keep forgetting what it was. It was with save time and spend money, or it was something about that kind of reel. I completely forgot what it was, but I really liked that reel. And, I personally want to use my time wisely and then spend the money, right? Because you can spend money on anything nowadays, but if you use your time wisely and then you spend later, you will be able to enjoy life and, just do the things you need to do. Not to say you shouldn't spend money now, but I'm just saying, like, everyone has time. And the way I took it or interpreted it was like, time is precious. So invest in yourself before you invest in garbage. Right. So that's how
And it's kind of like this. If I were to tell you, and I've been a speaker at a number of different spaces, 200 to a few thousand, and you always want to start off with a kind of a something, right? So if I were to tell you, hey, here's my cell phone, would you pay me? I'll sell you my cell phone for $10,000. Would you pay me $10,000 for my cell phone?
No.
Okay. Let me ask you two questions. Would you say yes, no, or tell me more?
Why? I would be like, yeah, tell me more. Why? Like, why 10?
So now what's so wild is, so in an audience where you say, and this is what separates this is kind of what separates the employee from the investor in a way, is you ask, I'll sell you my cell phone for $10,000. Who says yes? Who says no? So let's say you said no, right? Great. All people, you're out of the next round. Cool. Who didn't say no? Great. So then someone says, okay, what else do you want to know? Well, why would I pay you $10,000? Right? Now, if I say in this phone, I have Tony Robbins, I have Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley, good buddy of mine. There's a guy you guys all may know. His name is Jay. He goes by Jay Shetty. He's like this Buddhist monk, guy right from like Europe, right? We've been friends for a long time. Like, and it's like that. I've got about 20 contacts in here that could probably earn you $1 million each. Now, do you want the phone?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like, who doesn't want those contacts, right? But yeah, I see what you're saying.
And then what are you willing to give in return?
Maybe an arm.
So this becomes a very fascinating thing in the construction of value, right? And so I think this, when you think of, hey, I'm investing, and this is where a difference between a coach and a therapist in some ways is one of the dilemmas that we as coaches go through is, you have a problem, you want a result, and you have a limited period of time. If I get you that limited period of time within 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is, well, I want to make sure you're no longer relying on me, right? I want to make sure you produce a result, you've got your tools, you can replicate in your own life, you know what the cost of implementing is, you know what the cost of not implementing is, but here's your toolbox. Well, guess what? After that, I don't get paid, right, as a coach. So that's why coaches charge a lot, right? They'll be like, hey, because they also have to pay their own taxes and have to pay their own everything, And so along in the space of results, healing happens. Whereas in other spaces, and again, this is just from my personal voice experience, okay? I mean, like, total respect to all the therapists out there. But at least when I talk to therapists that I know, it's like someone has to come in with a self-diagnosed issue. I'm depressed. Or I have anxiety. So the approach is different. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. Yeah, I think it's more of like the healthcare system also kind of tapping into it, because it's almost like if you go to like a psychiatrist, you almost need like a evaluation to see them, right? Because some psychiatrists have, like, just in general, or if you want to, go to a therapist, you need to have like some kind of paperwork saying like you have an anxiety disorder, panic and anxiety disorder, or some kind of OCD or something, ADHD. So no, I totally get what you're saying. But yeah, no, I totally agree when it comes to that. So I guess a coach anyone can really have, and there's no real diagnosis you need really. It's just more so of like that one-on-one relationship, right? and you kind of assess where you are in life.
Correct. And also like their, what they're about, their style, there's, if they have any credentials, things like that, to get into the past. So Coherence Coaching is the name of my business. We just kind of do coaching, performance coaching, or any kind of coach that you want to be.
Life coach.
But, yeah. There's all sorts of, and this is the beauty of also one thing for those of you who are aspiring coaches or who want to. So there's coaching and helping people, then there's the business of helping people. And they're two very different things. You can make ice cream and give it away and do seva work, but you're going to make a business of selling ice cream, a different thing. So just make sure you have those two things separate, and like, what is your passion? And then starting with that passion of really wanting to serve others, your mess is your message. You don't have to be perfect. But if you can be able to name the journey that you've been on and be able to share at least 3 steps, give someone 3 steps more, your younger self than where they are, that's kind of, that's kind of all you really need, really. And just keep being.
Definitely. Just be a kid again, right? So, so there's a quote by Tony Robbins that you have, and it's funny because you mentioned him a little, once or twice already on the podcast, but it's called The Power of Positive Thinking, is the ability to generate a feeling of certainty in yourself when nothing in the environment supports you. So it's almost like when you have positive thinking, you also have assurance of who you are, and there's some level of confidence or knowing or belonging that comes with that, is the way I interpreted it. So what unique insights do you have into the power of coaching? Do you what unique insights do you have from just coaching, or just what you've learned?
Yeah. Great question. One is with coaching is the more that I've worked with people, I realize how freaking amazing everyone is. Like, to be honest, regardless of like whatever clothes they're wearing, regardless of, I remember once I was coaching a VP of PepsiCo goes to Paris to get his suits sewn by a private tailor. The dude was paying $7,000 for a suit. This is 8 years ago, right? Hadn't spoken to his daughter in 15 years. Was feeling stuck why he wasn't able to find love in his life. Probably a 49-year-old, right? I think at that time, wasn't able to find love in his life and been estranged from his daughter. Now, it's so interesting because as a coach, you have coaches, right? And that's the other thing, is a coach or someone who's really in their work is investing in their own environment. Whatever they're charging someone is probably like they're taking it and they're like paying another coach to take them to the next level. This is part of their training and development. So it was really wild when we worked together, because I told him, I said, hey man, I'm no sage from the stage, bro. Like, I don't know. I mean, you're obviously a lot more accomplished than I am. What I can do is hold space for you to share everything there is that's in your heart that you didn't get a chance to say or share, and I can guide you here to there and hold you accountable, and now he's a very high performing person, right? Remember, someone who's in a very high performing person or role, for them to ask for help or for them to, find a therapist, they have to create a very confidential space. What if it gets out in the company? Oh yeah, Umang, like the CEO is like, he's depressed, crying in the bathroom stall. Like, that's not going to make you look good, right? You're going to do whatever you can to keep that together. So anyway, sharing that. So that's one, is that everybody's so human, is what I've gotten out of it. The other piece, and I'll pause after this piece, is that I think there's a value to this mental health conversation that's obviously so important. Underneath that, though, I'm realizing there's also your emotional body and your energetic body. And if we don't deal with the emotional body and the energetic body, you were just dealing with the symptoms of mental unease. And so there's this, I think, huge opportunity now when we're thinking about trauma to be able to create safe spaces for emotional expression. And I think that's kind of this key that working with clients. on their performance aspect and also on their financial aspect, because money is such a touchy thing. People who have so much emotional charge around money. It's the emotional stuff. And the last thing I'll say about that is it has its own vocabulary. Emotions have their own dictionary of words, which are different from good or bad, or I like you, I don't like you.
Awesome.
And I think it's important for us to kind of learn that and help each other learn that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate it, Parth. And no, I mean, I totally get, like, from a human standpoint, there's just so much that comes with coaching. So I totally get where you're coming from. And thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share on the podcast? I think I'm getting a call from work right now. So gotta wrap up. But I definitely would like to have you on for part 2 for sure. But I think we covered some great material when it comes to coherence coaching, hypnotherapy. And the last thing I would like to add is, before I go, I know you wanted to answer this question, so feel free to answer it. But what are the 3 easy ways to go from scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset before we end this podcast? Because I know you really were excited to talk about this question, so I want to give it to you before I leave with my presence.
Very cool. Well, I'll lay it up for everyone as a generality, and we can cover the actual how-tos maybe in our next session. But
Part 2, baby.
I'm now noticing, after working with probably about 1,000 adults and about 180 something teenagers in the last over 10 years, it's 3 elements. When you're restoring your relationship with yourself, when you restore your relationship with others, and restore our relationship with the world, we go from scarcity to abundance. Right? So what does restoring relationship with ourselves look like? In some ways, forgiveness, completion, integrity. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but just stay on top of those 2 do's, communicating, completion, right? And then there's a couple other things. Restoring faith in others is being in learning spaces where we can practice leading into conflict. And what are the ways that we can utilize conflict as a healing tool? We don't often even quite know that, because, hey, you said something, I said something, I'm judging you based on some notion I have, and now I'm reacting to you based on a projection of your projection. Now we're lost. And so how do we heal this relationship with others? That the world is safe, people do have our back, and our relationship with God, or with the world, or masculine, or I don't say masculine, but structures and systems. Right now we're going through a huge crisis. Like, there's a loss in structures and systems, the banking system, the crypto system, all of this, right? So how do we restore our faith in the world? And the last thing I'll say is, this is a huge credit to one of my mentors. He said, Parth, the world has a lot of leaders, a lot of people telling other people what to do, and a lot of followers. But what if you could look at what the world is missing and be a good model for it? Like, what if you could just model that? You find others who are like wanting to model that. Like, the world is one.
Yeah, it's an abundance. The world has so many different differences, but I feel like we all want the same thing, right? So, but no, I really appreciate this, and sorry to cut you off. I'm just getting so many messages from, just work stuff. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Parth. And I definitely want to follow up with you and have you on part 2. So stay tuned. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Umang. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And go follow Parth at Coherence Coaching. He has a Law of Attraction summit coming out this Saturday.
Well, the summit is complete, but if you go to coherencecoaching.space/connect, you can ask an expert. You can, go on there. You can ask any question you want. I'll do the best to answer it, at least get you a couple steps forward from where you are. And if I don't have it, then I know plenty of people who can support you in that too. So coherencecoaching.space/connect.
Awesome. And thank you for viewing, liking, subscribing to the Healthy Indian Podcast. Go follow us. Go follow Parth. Thank you so much. And again, have a great day. Bye. That's it.